and welcome everyone to another edition of Oscar Talks, Oscar Talk. So, if this is your first time here, thank you very much for tuning in. We're growing exponentially, and I have to thank all of you for tuning in, and to all of you for following the post of my on my blog, and following this podcast on Facebook Live, my two different profiles. Twitter Live, Stitch Live. Let me see. I'm thinking about another one. The one that I don't know is how to do is Instagram yet. Oh, YouTube Live and Vimeo Live. So if I put all those subscribers together, we're about on the 700,000 or 700,000 plus. So I just want to get really, really high with this podcast in terms of followers and people that watch this podcast, not because of me, but because of what this podcast is doing for our community and the ability to communicate and talk about the things that happen in our community without having to um, uh, watch commercials or kind of like go around things or thoughts or whatever. This is a one-on-one conversation with those people that make things happen in our community. This case is Arizona because I'm based in Phoenix, Arizona. To those of you who have sent me messages from all over the world, thank you so much. I think we find commonality within the subjects of this podcast. So I am so sorry. Last weekend, I was not able to produce the podcast because I became a godfather, and I have to brag a little bit about it. My husband Gary and myself um, became godfathers, which is like an honor for me. I know I have two other godsons, a goddaughter and a godson in Colombia, and actually two godsons and one goddaughter, but they are older. This is my friend Cristina Garcia, who is a fashion model and a fashion producer, and her husband Alessandro Podesta, who is a pilot, a war pilot from Italy. And the event was last weekend. So I am really sorry that I announced Mary Coleman Way from Southwest Shakespeare as my guest. And I had to ask her to please cancel it and postpone it because they are leaving the country. And this was the only opportunity for me or for us to get together and baptize the baby. So I just want to show you one picture because I just have to brag about baby boy. There is, and his name is Phoenix because he was born in Arizona. Phoenix Alexander Podesta Garcia. They are on their way next month. Or the month after, I believe, at the beginning of next month, to Italy, to Rome, and they're going to Treviso. That's my husband Gary, myself, little Phoenix, Christina, and Alessandro, dad, last Sunday. Cute, huh? I mean, I feel like I could be a dad. That's what I tell Gary. But anyway, that's a different subject. But I just want to show you guys how I do this. So the reason that I look to the side is because I'm adding to the stream that camera. That camera up there. Hi, everyone. That is my phone, that is working as a camera, and I'm feeding from that phone these two lights and myself. I'm on the second floor of our home, and then this is where I produce this podcast. Just a bunch of little wires here and there, and I just put all these together because I wanted to talk to the community. I can't remember what edition is this podcast. This podcast is. I can't remember, but we are close to a 20. So, oh, I'm talking about things. Oh, I just want to share with you this. Just give me, please, 1 second. Look at this. Isn't it cute? Anyway, but I want to share with you guys something else. As we speak, the Oscars are happening in Hollywood, in Los Angeles, which is one of the things that I like to talk about the Oscars, the red carpet. You all see me what I do when I talk to the media, but is going to be fantastic. The red carpet, finally we're able to see our stars. Look at that. I don't know who they, oh, Halle Berry. Whoa. So we're all tuning in to see what are they wearing. Who's this? Oh, Viola Davis. Hmm. So fantastic is happening right now. I think he's just, oh my. It shows that we are resilient as a community, and the storytellers that are part of the academy are there to create more stories for us to enjoy. Through the pandemic, all of us, and I keep saying this, all of us went to the movies to see. To kind of like take ourselves away from the day-to-day problems. We went to the world of arts. We listened to concerts. We read books. We listened to or watch theater. You know, pre-tape theater and stuff like that. So we went to the world of arts to distract ourselves and to kind of escape from the reality that we were living and we're still living through the pandemic. I'm running pictures of the Oscars so you don't feel that I'm not watching the Oscars with you. What is he wearing? Anyway, so so you will see me talking about the best dress and the ones that didn't dress very well. Oh, they missed the point and they should go home because whatever. But later on, tomorrow and the next day, in some of the local channels and one national channel. So this is what is happening right now. If you are not watching the Oscars, I hope you're with us, because I do happen to have an incredible guest. We scheduled this conversation before the pandemic happened. I mean, this is a year ago. We were just talking recently, earlier today, that it was on my calendar a year ago before I got sick. And we finally, a year later, were able to reconnect. Incredible. But before we get there, another announcement. Society of Chairs. Our beautiful, wonderful Billy Joe Herberger is going to be honored this Wednesday, April 28th, 2021, at the Scottsdale Center for the Performing Arts. Thank you, Andrea Evans from Front Doors, to make it possible. And to all of you that you are attending, I will see you there. It's going to be quite the occasion. And I think, oh, this is hybrid and is benefiting the SAUS Foundation. And this is in memory of a wonderful, one of our key writers, I would say, and storytellers in town, Mike Saucier, who died all of the sudden from cancer. So this is going to benefit the organization that it was founded on his name, and the name of the organization, like I mentioned, is the Saucier Foundation, and it's organized by Front Doors Magazine. Let me see if I can do this. I have a lot of windows open. And it's going to be on Wednesday. So, and our Billy Joe Herberger, our wonderful Miss Effervescent, is going to be honored. So I will see you there if you're attending. There is. And if you are not attending, I hope you can tune in and help to support the Saucier Foundation and what they stand for, which is helping cancer. I can't remember which one is the cancer, but thank you so much. It's going to benefit TGen via the SAUS Foundation. It's going to benefit TGen. I got it. And I'll see Billy Joe Herberger, like we all love to see her. So my guest. So where do I start? Let's start right here. Stuart Graff is the CEO and president of the Frank Lloyd Wright Foundation. Now, some of you know who Frank Lloyd Wright is, the greatest American architect of the modern era in the United States. But he's not only an architect to me, and that was a conversation that I had with Stuart earlier today. He was a thinker, to a great extent, a thinker about our society and the American society, and more so a visionary of how the world will be in the future. So if you've seen any of these images, I'm going to run some examples, not examples, a collection of photos, so you can see the vast production of Frank Lloyd Wright. And this is, I haven't gotten into books and poetry, and I believe in music. I mean, he did everything. So I'm going to run this video so you guys can see who Frank Lloyd Wright was and his incredible legacy. Look at this. So those are, if you've seen any of these graphics, if you've seen any of these drawings, if you've seen any of these buildings throughout the country and in the world, that was Frank Lloyd Wright's production. His graphic design was precise, geometric, and the name of his tendency, or the name of his production in architecture, is called organic architecture, and we will learn more about it when we talk to Stuart Graff today. So I urge you to look into it if you haven't. If you know his personal life or private life, I urge you to look into his production as an architect. And if you know him as an architect, I urge you to go into his personal life and his way of thinking about the society as a whole. So I'm going to run the introduction of our guest today. He's the president and CEO of Frank Lloyd Wright Foundation. Ladies and gentlemen, Stuart Graff. So that was the introduction for who I consider a friend and an incredible person with a knowledge of this topic like no other. So, ladies and gents, Stuart Graff. Hello, sir.
Hey, Oscar. After seeing that, I had to put the glasses on just to get started because they keep changing, as you can see in all those photos, but they're reflecting too much. So I'll take them off for tonight.
Thank you for a year later have the conversation that we wanted to have a year back.
It's my pleasure, and I'm so glad that you're doing better.
Thank you. How was your year? Yeah, how was the year? I mean, tell
How was
me,
the year?
how was your year?
What a crazy year it was. I mean, we all know the pandemic. The foundation shut Talisin West down.
Yeah.
Our counterparts in Wisconsin shut that campus down. But you know what? We're coming out of this. What the commitment that I made to my staff, to our donors, to our audiences, is that when we reopen, and we did reopen on October 15th, when we reopened, we would be a stronger organization. And I'm happy to say that's true. Sure, there are financial challenges, there are some other challenges, but we've got new people, new programs, as well as bringing back so many of our very loyal and wonderful and dedicated staff members, some of whom have been working with us for 10, 15, 20 years. And so we're doing just fine. And what a great time to be sharing Frank Lloyd Wright's work with the world, because I will tell you, and I think you know this,
Yep.
it has never been more relevant, more urgently needed than it is right now.
Correct. So then the conversation that we were having earlier today is that he was a thinker and totally out of the box and futuristic. He knew that the world was going somewhere that it wasn't seen at the time, because when he started his practice in Chicago, and by the way, so people that are, those of you that they don't know, you don't know, Frank Lloyd Wright first was born in Chicago, and he was from the northern plains of the United States, and later on in life moved down to Arizona, which is the southern plains in the states. And there are two houses that he or institutions that he designed. One is Talisin, the one up north, and then there was the Talisin West, which is the one here. That's the one that I came to write my thesis about. That's how I end up in Arizona. So, out of the many writings that he had, do you have or do you remember one particular book that we can tell our audience to read?
Sure. Um, Probably the most important thing that someone can read is his autobiography, because
Mhm.
it explains this interrelationship between his life and his work, how the things that he encountered, and he was actually born in Wisconsin. He started his
Correct.
career in Chicago, but walking through the fields, through the hills and the river valleys in Wisconsin, this is where all of the ideas come from. Organic architecture is all about connection. And if we think about an ecosystem, right, the way that one plant helps another plant, which maybe helps a bird, which maybe helps a fox, and so on and so forth, all contributing to each other. Well, this is the observation of a young Frank Lloyd Wright, a farm kid from Wisconsin. And he takes that observation and nurtures this observation through his entire life to create this theory of architecture, not just an architecture of buildings, but this architecture of interconnection between people, buildings, landscapes, uh, great design. All of this has to come together and work as a complementary unit, like an ecosystem, so that we all thrive and grow. So the autobiography really teaches us an awful lot about where those ideas came from, how they developed, and you also get some insights into the man's ideas about politics, social organization, because it wasn't just an architecture of buildings. He thought about an architecture of society, and we call it at the foundation, we call it an architecture for better living.
And I like that title because it comprises all his ideas, all his way of thinking, and his writings. Because he had copious writings. I remember seeing plans where he has some ideas and he used to write them down right in the corner. So he was constantly thinking, and producing from that thinking what we know today, being the main structures that we know and they are preserved by the foundation. So
Well,
that's the question.
yeah, I can quantify that for you.
Yeah, go
So
ahead.
the archive, the
Yeah.
Frank Lloyd Wright Foundation archive, which now lives at the Avery Library at Columbia University and at the Museum of Modern Art, um, takes both institutions to house this archive. comprises about 1.3 million entries, which makes it by an order of magnitude larger than any other archive of an artist or architect in the world. But of that, there's about 23,000 drawings.
Wow.
So less, so I can't do the math in my head, 2%
Yeah.
of the archive is drawings. Then we have correspondence, we have manuscripts. There are, if I'm recalling this correctly, 300 unpublished manuscripts in that archive. There's photography, there's video work, there's audio work. His Sunday talks. We have, thanks
Hmm.
to Indra Bernson, who still lives with us and has basically grown up at Talisin. She's now well, she's a woman of a certain age, let's just say that. But Indra has been collecting all of these oral histories of the thousands of people who came and worked and studied at the two Taliesins. So this archive is enormous, and it speaks to the breadth of the man's ideas.
So that gives me an opening to the next question, because that's one of the purposes of the foundation. We saw through your presentation, and I didn't want to take much of a time on about Frank Lloyd Wright, because I want to talk about you and where do you come from and how do you get to Taliesin and to how do you get to Frank Lloyd Wright and the passion through your life to be basically where you are today. So give me a quick brief of the three elements that the foundation is responsible for.
Sure. So, as we say, we're trying to create this atmosphere where we're inspiring people with this architecture for better living. So,
Hmm.
three pillars of activity. We do our preservation work, and for a lot of organizations, a lot of people, preservation is all about the past, but
Yeah.
we're actually preserving to create this platform for understanding, and we bring innovation into our preservation work. Taliesin West, we're both laboratories. So just to give an example, we're working on a project with to restore the fabric roofs of
Hmm.
Taliesin West. For most organizations, that would be replace the canvas, put it back to what it was back in 1959. Wright never wanted that. Wright was always interested
Yep.
in what's new. So we're actually going to be doing this work with state-of-the-art, cutting-edge architectural fabrics, new
Wow.
technologies to provide thermal insulation, to reduce the impact of the sunlight heating the spaces so that they're more energy efficient, and it will look as it did in 1959, but it will function much, much better than it did in 59. It'll even, we hope, be leak proof. And, who's ever heard of a Frank Lloyd Wright building that doesn't have a leaky roof? But we're working on that. And so that's one platform.
So
Second
let me,
platform,
before we go to the next one, that's the preservation. I remember, and I found the picture. We talked about this particular picture.
we did. This is just a wonderful example of preserving artwork. This is a Chinese export painting, meaning it was designed in China to be exported out to another market, and we think in this case it went to Japan first. It's from
Oh.
about 1750. It is, and you can really see this in this image. It is three-dimensional. The faces
Yep.
are carved plaster. The ladies have little tiny pearl earrings that they're
Wow.
wearing, and little beaded ruby-like earrings. And this was in terrible shape. The screen. It had, since the 1980s, it had been taken off display. There was a really, really bad, blurry, faded photo mural in the space, and this is Wright's dining alcove.
Uh-huh.
And back in October, we were able to put this back on display for the first time. Our board chair, the wonderful T.K. McClintock, who's
Yep.
one of the world's leading conservators of fiber, so that includes paper, fabrics, certain other materials. TK worked with a couple of students, and I think the project took over a year. It was
Wow.
about 1,900 person hours of active work on the screen to restore it meticulously. And so we were able to put this on display for the first time in 4 decades. And we've done all kinds of work while we were closed, resetting the rooms, recreating certain materials, pulling some things out of the vaults and the archives to put it back on display, to really give people a much better sense of how this architecture, how this design work creates that environment for connecting with other people and connecting with all kinds of beauty.
So that was one of the that's this is one of the projects that took place through the pandemic. So that is part of what we just mentioned, what we talked about is part of the restoration
Mhm.
portion of the three pillars. Which one? What are the other two pillars that you want to or you guys are based on?
Sure. The second pillar is education. So what we're trying to do is not just give people an opportunity, as happened in the past, to come take a tour and enjoy a couple of hours out in the desert, with these beautiful
Mhm.
buildings. We really want people when they come to learn something, and it's not heavy-handed where we're lecturing them, but to learn
Mhm.
something that's going to change their lives. This is a design methodology, this organic architecture.
Mhm.
Today, you might call it biophilic design. That's the modern
Mhm.
language for at
Yep.
least one aspect of this. And what we know about this design is that when you have this relationship with nature in your life on a regular basis, the cortisol levels in your brain are reduced. That
Wow.
lizard brain in your hypothalamus way back here. Well, that doesn't take over your brain. You can actually think better. Your body heals better. And there's great data. The Coming out of COVID, I'll just share this.
Mhm.
If you have to be in a hospital, hopefully nobody has to be in a hospital, but if you've got to be in a hospital, make sure you have a room with a view of nature. The average hospital stay in America is 3 days long. If you have a view of nature, the average hospital stay is 2 days long. Because when you're disconnected from nature, your body starts to think, what's going on? This doesn't make any sense. I've got to protect myself. That cortisol and other hormones come flowing through your body. If you have that view of nature, everything starts to make sense. Your
Yep.
subconscious brain says, this is okay. I'm out in nature. Nothing is attacking me. I can focus my energy on healing. And while Wright didn't have any of this science has really developed in the last couple of decades. Intuitively, he seemed to have understood that by growing up in those fields in Wisconsin, by having all of
Yep.
those wonderful experiences with nature. So that's the second area is education. And this is youth programs, this is tour programs, this is lectures and other programs that we do.
Mhm.
This is a wonderful example of the tour program. I think that's Irmgard, a tour guide who's been with us for quite some time, leading a group of guests in our music pavilion, which is
Yep.
where we also have, as part of this education program, we want people to connect with the arts. So we have a jazz series, Southwest Shakespeare, and performs at Talisin West. They brought Patrick Page, Tony and Grammy winner, up
Oh,
as recently as last November to debut a play that he'd written,
wow.
which
Yeah,
was
and
subsequently.
I know that was part of the philosophical process of Frank Lloyd Wright. And he's like, I'm thinking when you say Taliesin West, is not only architecture and for architects. The idea is like you mentioned, he wanted everyone to learn a different way of living, an architecture of
Exactly,
living. So that's the
exactly.
second part, which is education. And I know that you guys have students that come from all over the world to learn the basics independently from what is the foundation. No, sorry, the education portion of Taliesin, the university of it. We can talk about that another day, but I want to just get centered on the
Sure.
foundation. So,
Well, and that's a really nice segue into the third area, Oscar,
mhm,
which is influencing.
correct.
So Frank Lloyd Wright influenced the world. This is why his
Mhm,
work winds up on the UNESCO World Heritage List. It's not because the buildings are beautiful. It's not because he's a genius. Those things are true.
yeah,
But the reason that we were able to persuade the World Heritage Committee to include Wright's work is because his work profoundly influenced the development of modern architecture in the 20th century all over the world. And that's not Stuart and the foundation talking,
yeah.
that's the World Heritage Committee talking. So we use the campuses, we use the platform that Frank Lloyd Wright has given to us as a way to explain to the world, again, through lectures, by inviting students from all over the world, by partnering with universities and architecture practices, the AIA, the Architecture, Culture, and Spirituality Forum. All of these organizations are invited to participate not only in the work that we're doing, but also to use the campuses as places for learning, places for growing, and places for advancing ideas about the development of this architecture for better living. So
So
we don't want to
basically,
just be as,
that's
yeah,
what
we're
you
not
told
going to
me.
be a static museum.
Yeah, that's what he told me. It's a lab. It's a living lab. We have here
Hmm.
Mark Candelaria, who is a colleague of mine, and he is with a bunch of people I see here because he has a great method of communicating to communicating the idea of architecture in many ways, and one of them is through cuisine and a way to see how other worlds live or they express their world of arts, and one of them is
Hmm.
cuisine. So I understand that this is a lab to continue the process of experimenting and conversations about us human living on planet Earth. So we have preservation, we have education, and we have influence. So those three pillars move parallel, correct?
Exactly.
Okay.
Well, I would say parallel, but they're intertwined.
Yep.
When we do the preservation work, just this coming spring, we're
Mhm.
going to have a group of graduate students from the University of Pennsylvania at our Wisconsin campus looking at a beautiful complex called the Midway Barns. Uh,
Mhm.
Taliesin is a farm as well as an architecture school
Okay.
and a house and a studio.
Mhm.
And so the barn is in bad shape. It's been neglected, I have to say, for a long time. And we're beginning the preservation work by creating a comprehensive plan in partnership with the University of Pennsylvania. They're going to be bringing state of the art technology. So we're working at the forefront of architectural preservation. And in turn, when that barn is conserved, when it's restored, that gives us a platform to start talking about the intersection between architecture, agriculture, land use planning. And we intend to have a facility, a think tank there at Taliesin to examine all of these issues, to invite scholars and thought leaders from all over the world to talk about these issues that are critical to our future.
That's so typical. That's typical. That's the conversation of the moment. Is
Mhm.
how can we? Oh, there's a video here. I didn't know. I just perhaps want to run the video as so we can talk without sound. So this is the conversation of the moment. Is the conversation of how can we go back to where we came from, which is out in the wilderness, if you would, and be safe, sustainable.
Mhm.
So when are these people coming?
So the University of Pennsylvania is going to be coming this spring to start the conservation work.
Mhm.
And we've begun conversations over the last year with thought leaders, with universities all over the world.
Fantastic.
Everything has slowed down because of the pandemic.
Hmm.
We just had last week, we had the University of Oklahoma inform us that they were not going to be able to join us this summer at Taliesin for a program because the students actually want to go home and visit their families. Parents say thank you. This may be the only time graduate students are eager to come back to their families, but they want to go back to their families. They don't want to spend just part of the summer at Taliesin. We're talking to schools coming in the fall to Taliesin West. And So I would say over the next few years, what you'll see is a number of conversations that we've been having over the last year are going to start coming to life at the two campuses. And that's exciting, along with all kinds of other programs that we're doing at the two Taliesin's.
So there's plenty of Taliesin in many levels for us to enjoy. And I want to run. So we saw Taliesin up north in Wisconsin, and this is Taliesin here in Arizona. Mr. Wright and his wife used to travel all the way from, oh my God, Wisconsin, and like via car,
Mhm.
all the way down to Arizona back then when, and this is the product of having a second home in the desert that later became also a university or an institution for education, and now is part of the preservation for Taliesin. Now, that these two elements or these two structures, one up north, one here, are part of the foundation. I know that we have a video that you sent me earlier today for us to understand a little bit more what Frank Lloyd Wright Foundation is. Should we run it?
Yeah, this is a perfect time, Oscar.
Perfect. Let's see. Let's just look at the video so I understand and everyone gets an idea of all these components.
Frank Lloyd Wright's born in 1867, dies in 1959. His career goes from 2 years after the Civil War 2 years after the launch of Sputnik. And over the course of a 7-decade career, he embraces every innovation that comes along. And he goes on to revolutionize the world as someone that fundamentally changes the way we think about shelter and the way we live in relationship to the world around us. He returns to the native soil of Wisconsin, where he grew up, where his family had settled in the mid-19th century when they emigrated from Wales. Talisin, in turn, becomes the full embodiment of his earliest ideas about organic architecture. The entire surrounding landscape is captured in these broad ribbons of windows, this marvelous, amazing view of the countryside as he's going back and forth between Los Angeles and Wisconsin and also Japan. He has occasion to stop in Arizona.
They embarked to go to the state land office and ask if there was any land available for sale. The answer was, yes, I have this piece of land that I've been waiting for some fool to come along and fall in love with it. And Mr. Wright immediately thought, that's got to be me.
And from the ground itself, the stones, the sand that he finds here at the desert, he begins to construct Talisin West. Wright creates the foundation that bears his name in 1940. He endows the foundation with these two living monuments to his work and his ideas, Talisin and Talisin West.
There's a really obvious connection between the built world and the natural world here at Talisin West. The Frank Lloyd Wright Foundation inspires people to discover and embrace an architecture for better living through meaningful connections to nature, the arts, and each other.
The two Taliasins really represent the sum total of his life and the living work. During his life, Wright was constantly changing them. And that makes their maintenance, their upkeep, their preservation something that is difficult to undertake, something that's expensive to undertake.
A way that anyone can engage with us is to help support our work now and for what we envision for the future. Members and supporters are the legacy of the Frank Lloyd Wright Foundation.
The second area where we really need the public support is for our educational programs. We live in a world where questions about sustainability that Wright explored in his time have become more relevant to our ability to live well.
It's connection to everything. It's connection to life. It's connection to hope. It's connection to creativity, inspiration.
We know that the impact of Wright's principles taken in the world today in design and build and in even educational programs make us happier and healthier people.
The Frank Lloyd Wright Foundation is now poised to live up to the need and the strength of its inherited message. And we should all be supportive and very grateful for that.
Well, congratulations on that piece. Fantastic message.
Thank you, Oscar. And you got to meet via the video. I don't think you've met her in person yet. Our wonderful new leader for advancement, Kimberly Valentine, who joined us from the LA Philharmonic. And Kimberly is just one member of an extraordinary team of people that we have leading this work. It's been the great privilege over the last year to watch a group of people who come together, who collaborate, who have each other's backs when we're ready to tear our hair out because we're doing so much during this pandemic with so few resources, or whether we're just having a moment where we can't go forward and we need help to pick up and move forward. We have been doing that for each other. We have been doing that for our staff when we had to do furloughs. Our staff just spontaneously formed a buddy system so that people who weren't in the office knew that there was a social outlet, there was a connection if they needed to go to the grocery store or the doctor. Someone would be there to help them out. And so many layers of collaboration support that have made us the stronger organization as a result of this pandemic. So I wouldn't wish it on us again, but we didn't let all this loss and suffering go to waste. We've turned it into something that we hope makes us a better resource to our community and a better resource to our world.
The creativity and ingenuity of humans is It has no limit. It's limitless. That's one of the things that I read years back. I think it was Louis Kahn who wrote that, and I think it's so true because during the pandemic we all found other methods, other ways to get distracted, or found ourselves in the middle of a huge problem, and we found ways to get out of it. So let me ask you one question here in terms of Taliasin. At some point, this was a fellowship, so people the kids or the students happen to live and work in Taliasin as part of their process. Is that still part of the figure of the Frank Lloyd Wright Foundation?
That's not a part of our current
Okay.
operations. Wright doesn't like architecture schools. Let's just make that very clear. But architecture
Point
schools
taken.
possibly could be useful to teach some engineering. But
Correct.
so he founds a fellowship in 1932. We'll celebrate the 90th anniversary next year as an alternative. He thinks people should learn by doing. So come apprentice at Talisin, you will learn to draw in the drafting studio. You will learn to build. Pardon me. You'll also learn to farm. You'll learn to dance. You'll learn to play an instrument. You'll learn all kinds of things. This continues on through his death in '59. It continues on until the mid-1980s. And in the mid-1980s, there was a desire to form an architecture school. That's the beautiful drafting studio up at Talisin. Remind me to tell you what's written over the door. You can barely make out the lettering, but just to finish the story. In 85, 86, the fellowship says what we need to do is we need to create an accredited architecture school. And that's very controversial, even within the members of the fellowship itself. And mind you, some of these people, most people stayed for about 12, 14 months, but some of these people stayed for decades. And as I mentioned, some are still with us. Minerva Montooth, age 97. I saw her last week in Wisconsin. And Minerva, I think, came in 1947. So she's been with us for a very, very long time. But the I guess the real point that I'd say is that there was this question: could you move from an architecture fellowship, an apprenticeship program, to an architecture school? The school struggled, and last year we had a pretty well publicized, messy divorce with the school. It's now its own institution. And these programs that I talked about, these collaborations with universities and with architecture practices, are the thing that we're bringing back to life more in the spirit of the original fellowship pre-1986 than in the school era from 1986 to 2017.
Well, that's sorry to interrupt, but that's one of the things that I wanted to tell you before we jump on the call. I spoke with leadership in my company, the company that I work for, and there is a tour coming, and they gave me the briefing actually today, and I'm going to be part of it, which allowed me to meet your advancement. That's right, the chief of advancement, which will be great, and other people from Taliasin, because the last time that I was in Taliasin was with Gary back when we went for a jazz concert, even before the pandemic. We were wearing coats. It was very cold that evening.
It was January. It was. I think that was I think that was when we had Jason Palmer and Mike Coker from ASU. It was that or the Renee Rossness concert, because again, we're bringing in just brilliant artists and jazz. We're starting to talk to a couple of other organizations locally about bringing their work up. But I want to go back to that drafting studio.
Go back to
up in Wisconsin. That photo. Over the door of the drafting studio was a quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson. Now, I want you to think about Wright, born in 1867. He is sort of in the middle of the transcendental era of American thought. Emerson, Thoreau, Walt Whitman, later on John Dewey. These are the thinkers that influence him among a long list of thinkers. But just over that image of the curved doorway in the distance, you can see some letters. And what he's got written there is this quote from Emerson: "What a man does, that he has." In other words, what he's saying is your only measure of worth in the world is what you contribute to it, what you give to it. If you're at work in that drafting studio, there's no pressure about, are you actually doing something useful, right? It's there when you walk in, it's there when you leave. Have you contributed in some meaningful way to the world? And it's this idea, this sense of connection with each other, this sense of connection with the earth that we take from the earth, but what are we giving back to the earth? This is what informs rights architecture. And if you think about the world that we're living in today, think about the last year that we've had. We're surviving because of what we're giving for each other. We've seen all of this division, all of this, the political division, the social division that's attached to it. But look at all the kindness, look at all the generosity, look at how we appreciate after being locked in, going outside and enjoying nature. How you mentioned it earlier. We've been able to enjoy music and streaming theater and all these things. And let's be grateful to our artists. But I also think we owe a debt of gratitude to those teachers and family members that taught us to have this rich life of the mind so that we could enjoy our lives without going out to a bar, going out to a party all the time. Sure, we like them, but we can also have really meaningful, enjoyable lives just by participating in the arts or communing with nature. And that's this sense of what you do in the world is what you have, what you contribute to it to make it better gives your life meaning. And that's the heart of rights work.
This what you just said is some like my thinking through all this because of your time indoors behind doors, your privacy of your own home. I mean, at least myself, I had the opportunity to think a lot of things and even to read books again, printed books that I haven't gotten because I was basically all the time in the computer or used the phone even to read anything that it was kind of curious, sparked my curiosity. So I found these and I just love this quote within the Guggenheim Museum up in Fifth Avenue in New York. And I think it's just incredibly telling just by just these 6 words of how interconnected we are, space and art. Incredible.
Well, Wright spends a lot of time talking about what he says is the space within. So there's a quote from the Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu, and the original quote is about a cup. And he says, the reality of the cup is not the clay from which it's made, but the space contained within, right? It's all about what it can hold. That's what the cup is all about. So Wright modifies that and says the reality of a building is not the walls from which it's made or the roof overhead, but the space contained within and the lives of those who inhabit it. When Wright talks about architecture, it's not just about the design of structure. It's the design of a way to live. And he also calls this, because if you think about the way that our lives work, I mean, you mentioned closing behind doors. A door is a closure, but a door is also a portal. It's a way to move from one thing to the next. And Wright talks about that movement through space by calling it the continual becoming, how one space opens up to the next space and opens up to the next space. And a room opens up to a garden, which opens up to a landscape, which opens up to a sky, which takes us back into, the light takes us back into the next space, and then we go back in. And we're always on this journey through space. And if we can make that experience seamless and beautiful, so that nature and our homes, our lives, are all interconnected in a seamless way, our lives are better for that. That's his belief. And since I'm an 8-year-old boy, I have subscribed to that belief. I didn't understand it as an 8-year-old boy, but that's when it all began.
So you just mentioned something that I was curious, and after we talked about a year ago, I said this is the right person to be on the grab the flag and move forward with the ideas from Frank Lloyd Wright. So I found Frank Lloyd Wright when I went to architecture school. And I remember because you have to study all the architects from the modern era, and you study their philosophy, and you study their production, and so on and so forth. And I found Frank Lloyd Wright. I went back to Frank Lloyd Wright when I went to my master's in Spain, because, and perhaps you know this, from the eyes of Europeans, Frank Lloyd Wright was the first modernist architect of the New World. He was in the forefront. So as we see other architects in Europe, or as we see Europe on the forefront of architecture and ingenuity because of their tradition in architecture, they see America as Frank Lloyd Wright, the first architect who kind of questioned how do we live and brought technology into into the daily living. His kitchens, the way the car that it has its own parking structure, et cetera, et cetera. So I wanted to ask you that question. When did you find Frank Lloyd Wright, and why the passion?
Sure. I had the great fortune to be in an unusual education program in the Chicago Public Schools. Go Public Schools.
Mhm.
The Where I was going to, a good portion of my education took place on field trips to museums, to factories, Fermilab. I mean, we were all over the place. And on a field trip looking at Chicago architecture, I was 8 years old. We walked into a building called the Rookery, which was designed not by Frank Lloyd Wright, but had a lobby that was redesigned by Frank Lloyd Wright.
Oh,
And it blew my mind. The space, the light, and the lobby was a wreck. This was before restoration, probably created my passion for preservation work as well.
oh,
But it was this different sense of space and light, and how
yes.
ornamentation can be incorporated in um, this complete synthesis with the building. And I did what I always did. As a kid, whenever I found something that I was interested, the next stop was the public library, and I walked out with a stack of books and read everything I could read about Frank Lloyd Wright. And the thing that fascinated me wasn't just the fact that here was this great architect doing this interesting work, but it was his life story. This is a
Hmm.
farm kid. He doesn't have a formal education. He drops out of college after a year. He may not have completed high school. We're not positive about that. But 1 year of college, he just goes to work. And as you've observed, his work, particularly when it travels to Europe, really begins to change the world. So
Yep.
I thought, as a working class kid, I thought, well, there's the Rookery right there. So I
Yep.
thought maybe there's an opportunity for me to make a difference in this world too. And so he inspires me with his design, but he also inspires me with his life story. Uh, I go back to school. I'm 8 years old. I want to be an architect. And my teacher, looking at what I do, says, Stuart, you have no drawing talent whatsoever. Let's think about another career. Um, Several teachers told me that, and I am grateful to them, because teachers are great when they tell you what you're good at and they help you, and they're even better when they say, yeah, don't, that might not be the right dream for you.
Not for
So
you.
I'm so Belle Willens was her name, and thank you, Mrs. Willens, because you helped me do this. But what it meant was, as I pursued a career in engineering and then law and business,
Hmm.
at the same time I had this parallel interest. And on the bookshelves behind me, and you can see some of them, the big title right over my shoulder here, there's a massive library of Frank Lloyd Wright's work. Anytime I can see a Wright building, or a building from that one of his apprentices, something that's inspired by Wright, I would go pursue this.
Hmm.
Fast forward, but to about 5 years ago, I'm sitting in Philadelphia with a dear friend and our two husbands over dinner, and I said, I've achieved what I want to achieve in my corporate career, and I really want to make the move into nonprofit. I had spent my professional life doing a lot of work, whether it was serving on boards of arts organizations, suing the entire health insurance industry on behalf of people with disabilities, and I will say, getting a victory. People with AIDS and HIV got access to care that they wouldn't have gotten but for that lawsuit. Working on free speech cases, all kinds of cases. I thought, this is the time, since I've achieved my professional goals, I can make a difference in the world. And my friend, Lynn Rozanka, is the attorney for the Frank Lloyd Wright Foundation. So Lynn pulls out of her briefcase the prospectus for the CEO job. She said, I was hoping you were going to say that, because the foundation has a brilliant staff, but what they need is someone to design a new strategy and to help raise money. And Stuart, you can do this. And it motivated me to write a resume. I honestly did not think there was a snowball's chance in hell that I would get the job. I was sure there were better qualified people, but apparently my lawyering skills came in handy. I was persuasive, got the board to lower the standards, and here I am a little bit more than 5 years later. And I just look, even with the impact of the pandemic, my goal was to make the foundation, bring financial stability to the foundation, and we are well on that path toward financial stability, maybe for the first time in our history. So it's really exciting to take a lifelong passion, something that I have cared about and that has shaped the way I view the world and shaped the career path and given me a sense of self-confidence despite humble upbringings, and to now be able to expose others to that legacy. And forgive me, this is a long-winded answer, but I'm going to make
No,
one last statement.
please.
When I joined the foundation, our programs for youth were on hold. We had no summer camps, we had no school programs, and I thought that was criminal, absolutely criminal. Um, and when we brought in this wonderful, talented person uh, from the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago. And what I said to her is, look, if the kids learn about architecture, they learn about engineering, the STEM topics,
Yep.
that's great. If some of them decide they want to become architects, their parents will hate us because it's hard to make a living as an architect, but if they want to become architects, great. But the thing that I want these programs to do is for every kid to walk out feeling like they get to have a say about the world they live in. That is Wright's legacy, this legacy that even the kid from the most backward place on earth, a farm on southwest Wisconsin. Nobody in Wisconsin hate me for that. I'm just trying to be dramatic to make a point. But even if you are as far removed from the movers and shakers of civilization, you still have a chance to change the world. And if the kids leave their day, their week, their month at Talisin West, thinking I get to have a voice in this world, every one of us, you, me, all of our listeners throughout the world, are better off because those kids have heard that message and brought that into their hearts. So that's doing Frank Lloyd Wright's work too, is giving those kids the power, as every other visitor, that power to believe they have the ability and maybe even the obligation to change the world.
So your answer is just perfect because I think you brought that passion that you had, became your job, and with passion and your job, the result is what we see today. Look where you are. You are thinking about our kids already, which that's the reason that my husband and myself, and husband Gary and myself, support education, because that's when your early creation of who you are comes when you are a kid, when you can see the world,
Mhm.
when you are in
That's
front of situations like the ones that you guys are putting them on, or information that otherwise they cannot get at home or the internet or anywhere else. So it is incredible to see that your passion and your job met. This is a match made in heaven. So thank you to your friend who pulled up her portfolio and show you that you could be right there. Where are you, at the UNESCO?
This is at the UNESCO World Heritage Meeting in Baku, Azerbaijan, in July of 2019. And this is moments before they announce that we will bring this wonderful honor back to the United States. Taliesin West is the second UNESCO World Heritage Site in Arizona, the only other one being the Grand Canyon. That is our delegation, this wonderful team. You've got people from the State Department, the National Park Service, and representatives from Falling Water, Hollyhock House, and the Frank Lloyd Wright Building Conservancy are all there with me, and that's right next door to that beautiful Zaha Hadid, um,
Yes.
the Haider Aliyev Center,
Yeah.
Cultural Center. This is right next door to that. So we were surrounded by great architecture and organic architecture.
What exposure, and something that I perhaps you don't know, or perhaps is not known by Americans, is that being a UNESCO affiliated type of structure, let's say in this case structure, it is a tremendous funding and exposure to the world. A place that I love in Colombia is part of my childhood. Cartagena de Indias, Cartagena, Colombia,
Mhm.
is part of the UNESCO heritage. And after it was declared, the town changed the vibe. I mean, people from all over the world wanted to see. So there was more awareness. People from all over the world wanted to travel to Cartagena, experience the Caribbean. That's one thing. The other thing that is part of the UNESCO is the carnival from the city that I'm from. Barranquilla, Colombia, has its own carnival and is part of that heritage, and is a verbal and written part of the UNESCO registrar. So this is huge for the United States and
Well,
huge for us.
that's right. And look, what this is saying is that these places, along with the gastronomy of the city of Tucson, is on the
Yeah.
World Heritage list.
Mhm.
Um, the Statue of Liberty, the Taj Mahal, forests in the Middle East, the Nile River Delta. These are the places, these are the things that have shaped global culture and
Correct.
made humanity what it is. Uh,
Correct.
I've had the pleasure of traveling all over the place. I've been to 69 countries. My husband and I have been in all 7 continents, including Antarctica, and one of the things that we love is we always make it a point to find these places. It's not so much that they're bucket list items, but if in order to understand the culture of the place that we're visiting, to
Yep.
understand where that culture comes from and how we as Americans benefit from that culture across the world, south of us in Cartagena, um, uh, in the forests in southern Africa. As we get this opportunity to participate in these things, we learn where our humanity comes from, and not what its limits are, but rather what its possibilities are. We grow when we share in these places. So this World Heritage Program, I mean, it's a fragile program, especially in the U.S., because we wrap it up in our foreign policy. But it's this amazing thing that we get to share. We get to celebrate each other. Uh, that image that you showed at that table, I want to share a story.
Hmm.
After the man on the dais gavels in and announces that the vote is approved and we're on the World Heritage List, these leaders from all over the world come to our table to congratulate us. And there was a
Oh,
gentleman from Burkina Faso who came to the table, and he said, I've not been to the United States. I've only seen images of Frank Lloyd Wright's works in books. But I think of this as the future. I think of this as an image of hope. Even though it's different from what we have in my country, it gives me this sense of what is possible
wow.
from humanity.
Wow.
And I mean, we were both crying as he's telling me this. Talk about that connection, that common humanity, as we take people from different cultures and a man who's never seen these things but can still be inspired by it. All of us can
Yeah.
be inspired by so much if we open ourselves up to the cultures that other people bring to us and take and participate and share our culture in this really meaningful way. It's not about translating into different languages. It's not about you know measuring whose is better, whose is worse. It's about sharing with an open mind and an open heart. And everybody fills your heart and your mind fills with the potential for humanity to grow and thrive when you're exposed to this.
Spoken like a true American, like a true American. This is exactly what you just said, touches my heart, because that's the reason, the main reason, or the main soul of this country is what you can bring to the table and what your hard work can do to make this country better.
Hmm.
So I'm really happy that you have shared that with me, because it validates me as an immigrant, and it validates the work that I do daily in order to make my community better. And I do it from my heart with no other reason. So thank you for saying that. That that was powerful, and it touches my heart. You almost made me cry, but I just like
Okay.
contain.
Well, I'll try to make you cry still. But there is a Talisin West, when you first walk onto the property from the parking lot, there's a
Yep.
quote from Walt Whitman that's it's etched into a red concrete square. Now, Whitman has his problems. We don't need to go into the problems of Walt Whitman. But what it says is, "Thou too, America, who welcomest all, who embraces all." And Wright's ideas, are sort of at that borderline between appropriation of others' cultures, right? I mean, we see, pardon me, I have instances where, he is using tropes about Native Americans in his decor.
Yeah.
And by the standards of 2021, it can be a little cringeworthy. But at the same time, he is also, the reason that he's incorporating is not because he thinks it's beautiful decoration. He is putting it out there because he sees it as this way to get people to think about a civilization that had this deep connection with the landscape. He's referencing them to inspire us, those who came from European culture, to look to the example of the Native American and all indigenous peoples. He looks at Mesoamerican, and he also does this through connection with Japan, and he even throws in a reference here and there to European architecture. But he wants us to be inspired. And so, as I like to say, there's a fine line, and it's always blurred, between appropriation and allyship. To be
Or inspiration.
Exactly. And so I like to believe, from reading as much of his reading as I've encountered, I'd like to believe more often than not, he was trying to find allyship with other cultures and not to appropriate it and make it his own. And to the extent that he is guilty of appropriation, well, he is, to be fair, a man of his time, a man of his background. And as I tell our staff when we talk about these issues, I said, look, our job is to be better than the man was, to be more inclusive, more embracing, more welcoming than he was. He may have been a progressive man of his time. Let's be inspired by his progressive approach and be progressive in our time in a way that's appropriate for our time. And that means that we do work that embraces recent experience we had was working with a community of developmentally disabled adults in Scottsdale to create a product that we sell in our store, but in working with this community called the Opportunity Tree, great organization, by the way, fabulous organization. We work with them to allow their members, as they call the community they serve, to expose their creativity, to expose their capability. We talk about the developmentally disabled, and I hate that language because it focuses on something they can't do. Our partnership was all about what this group could do. And the creativity is extraordinary. The ability of people who often the job that they're given is count 25 screws and put it in a little bag, and we'll sell it at the Home Depot. Well, we're giving them the chance to create artwork and beautiful artwork, and then to share in the proceeds of the creation of that artwork. So one of their members, when I asked him, he comes to me with this. I should have brought it in here from the other room. This candle holder that they make. And he's got this big smile on his face. And I said, you seem to feel really good about this. Tell me about this. And he said, this is the first time, I'm guessing it was in his early 30s. I said, this is the first time I really feel like a human being.
Oh, wow.
Now, so take a moment, pick up the broken pieces of your heart and put it back together. But for us, this was about that progressive work of Frank Lloyd Wright. This is on mission. This is an extra. The studio that we looked at, that studio had the first woman architect licensed to practice in America, was Wright's first employee. About 40% of the people in the studio and in the fellowship were women. He has people from every continent working. It's all about what you can contribute, what a man does, forgive the sexist language, what a man does that he has. If he even has openly gay people working in the 20s.
Yeah, I remember that.
They couldn't be openly gay outside the studio.
Yep.
But in the studio, what can you contribute? How can you make a difference? How can your work grow and help us and help society? So he does represent that sense of America. And I'm glad you're reacting that way, because this is the America that I'm proud of. This is the America that inspired me to be a lawyer. This is why when they recite the Declaration of Independence on July 4th on NPR, I cry, because sure, it's an imperfect place. We have rarely lived up to the ideals of our founding, but we work harder with each generation to get there. That's our job. And Wright saw that as the job of his life, the job of his studio, is to help create this architecture that was representative of these American values of inclusion, of self-actualization, of democracy, where every individual matters. Every individual contributing in their unique way matters. So we just try to put that to work every day in our work.
All of what I mean, this is, I'm thinking that I'm sitting in a lecture, because I could not
Sorry.
find a better person. No, I could not find, I'm geeking here. Like, this is what I sit down and I read for hours, or watch on NPR, on PBS, or listen to an NPR. So one thing that we were just talking about is his idea that we're all equal, and only few people know that this is the Johnson Building. It is an equalizer. And then if you see, let me see if I can share the screen. If you see, the reason that this is an equalizer is because through these huge columns and that ability to get the light in, everyone at the lower level is the same. So there's not, this is one of the first experiments in the world of architecture about open office, by the way. You can read more about this, but this translucency, the amount of air, the amount of light coming in, the exchange of air, et cetera, et cetera. But he was far ahead from all that he realized as an architect.
Yeah, and there's these visual sightlines between the management and the workers. So the management can see the workers, but the workers see the managers.
Correct.
There's also a wonderful connection that's hidden in those columns. Actually, do you mind putting that image back?
Yeah, of course.
Because there's a wonderful desert connection. So a lot of people assume that those columns are solid. Those columns are hollow. They are a concrete embracing a mesh of steel. And that mesh of steel is taken from the staghorn cholla cactus of the Sonoran Desert. So anybody who's been out here knows that this is a cactus. It grows as a stalk, and then there's a lot of mass on top. And that's how Wright wanted to design the building. So he looked to nature to provide the solution. How can I design a thin, efficient structure that can support this mass at the top? And this is the beauty that resulted. And there's one other wonderful thing about these columns. So this building is built in circa 1940. There are 3 conduits in those columns. The first is for the telephone. The second is for electricity. And the third column is labeled for the future.
Oh, I didn't know that part. I didn't know all the specifics regarding this incredible structure. I know that I just put a section. I was just looking for it, where you can see a section of this building, so you can see how the columns were built. But that's like a architecture 102 or 202 class that one day we will go through all this, and we can spend an hour or hours talking about it. Oh, there it is. I found it. So well, if you are an architect or designer and you're watching, you are up to it for a treat right now, because you don't read this on these books. So now I see. He says glass tubes. Oh, I see. Now I see how he supported.
And what he's doing, this isn't an industrial section of Racine.
Yeah.
He was actually trying to convince Herbert Johnson to move it out of Racine into the countryside. And Hib Johnson wanted to build in the city. He felt it was necessary for the city. So what Wright was doing, we talked about this connection with nature, and here you have this building that seems to be closed off from nature. Yes. And yet with these columns, with these wonderful overhangs, they're called dendritic columns, with the the mosaic. You couldn't really see in the photograph the mosaic that's created from these Pyrex tubes. If you're looking on the right-hand side of the drawing, you can see the columns and these tubes in the administration building. We're looking from the top down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He creates this internal landscape that's illuminated by the sun, gives you the sense of being in nature, even though you're closed off from nature. So he is still inspiring you from nature, and you're still getting all those benefits of that connection from nature.
This is just like amazing. We can go on forever. I love this, and I'm geeking now because this is like I'm watching a show and I'm part of it. so this is funny actually, because like I said, the foundation, and I am going to speak just because I know of your work, they found the perfect spokesperson, and they found the person that can run the foundation. So
You're very kind,
congratulations to
Pastor.
you. Absolutely. I mean, I can feel the passion. I feel, I can see the knowledge, and I know that your message is because you truly believe in the foundation, and you know about Frank Lloyd Wright. But I know I'm going to run a quick video, because it's that tradition of who you are, and I have a question for you right after
Okay.
this video. Check this video.
Okay.
Look at that hunk. So the handsome man.
Yeah, what happened to him?
Yeah, where is it? Where is it? So
There was one photo in there, which is a bunch of my family
Yeah.
that we're sitting around the table, and my brother and I are helping my Aunt Barbara blow out her birthday candles, and tomorrow is her birthday, by the way. But
Oh,
there's a few things that I love about that photo. That is mostly my father's family. My parents were divorced when I was young, but my mother is in that photo. She's the beautiful blonde in that photo, and the second from the left, and that sense of connection is just so important in our family. But next to my mother, in the pink, is my Aunt Luisita. You mentioned that you're an immigrant.
yep.
Luisita and her sisters all immigrated from the Philippines, joined that family, and that look that she is giving the camera, she is giving to my Uncle Howard, a man who was very much like a father to me. And when I saw that photograph just a little while ago for the first time in years, it was right after my Uncle Howard passed away, and I looked at that photograph and I said, look at how much she loves him. So I
Yep.
just adore that photo. That is a really meaningful photo. And it was completely unfair of you to surprise me with that, but thank you for doing so.
I mean, that's not the only surprise that I have, by the way.
Uh-oh.
But we have countless minutes to go through. No one is paying for this. I'm paying for this, but this is just a platform for us to talk as much as we can. And I just love the fact that you are touching that you're giving this personal moment, or touching this personal level. So with that in mind, and you saw the video, I always ask my guests, if you are able to talk to the young Stuart, what can you tell him at that level, like the last picture? What can you tell him? What will be your message? Because there's young people watching and listening that I think that it will be a parallel to them.
Well, I guess I'll say this, and I think it's the lesson that many of us realize in middle age, or some older. I'm afraid for those people that never realize this lesson, but I'm going to use somebody else's words. I wish I could remember who I heard this from, and I just heard this recently. Don't care about the opinions of people that you don't respect. And I will say that as a young kid, growing up without a lot, I said my parents were divorced when I was very young. We didn't have a lot of resources available to us, especially compared to other kids in the neighborhood. As going off and putting myself through Northwestern while there were other kids who were, there with mom and dad writing a check, and good for them, good for them.
Yeah.
I often will say I overcompensated. And I wish I could have just relaxed a bit more, recognizing that the people that I was reacting to were ultimately people that I didn't respect. And there was a photo in there of me sitting with a woman, a friend of mine, named Yvette, who lives in Melbourne, Australia. Yvette and I met the first day at Northwestern, and that photo was taken in Melbourne about 10 years ago. And it's she's one of those people that just, that's it. And she's just one of those people that we just got each other. We understood each other so well. And I think she's one of those people who I want, even now, I want to make sure that I'm earning her respect every day, because she brightens my life. She makes me think better and differently about the world, as all my friends do. And I'm truly grateful for them. So yeah, it would be, kid, don't worry about impressing the people that you don't respect. If you don't respect them, they don't matter in your life. Figure out who you need to respect, who's going to be kind enough to tell you when you're doing something right, and loving enough to tell you when you're screwing up. And if you have that in your life, those people, they're going to shape your future and make you a better person, make you the best person you can be. And they will pour little bits of themselves into you so you can make yourself.
That's a fantastic message, because it's invest yourself in those people that invest in you. Basically. Yep. So that's a beautiful message. And out of all this, you yourself have a husband like myself. I'm legally married. Thank you very much, Supreme Court.
I've got two. Whoops, I don't know how to do this again. I've got two, because we've had 4 wedding ceremonies, because the law kept changing. It's worse than Elizabeth Taylor. I've married the same guy 4 times, but no divorces yet.
I married mine twice, and a third celebration here. It's a long story, but we'll get to that story in a minute, because I want to show you that, like, you are a reflection also of that person that you chose to be your companion for life. And this is a quick clip of that companionship. So that is a companion.
Well, let me tell you about Robbie. So Rob runs the theater program at the Arizona School for the Arts.
Yep.
He is a brilliant theater director, theater educator. He created the theater program at the Chicago High School for the Arts. Before that, he ran training and education for all of Second City, which is the great improv comedy club and school out of Chicago, but it's all over North America. But I'll tell you the story about why I fell in love the moment I fell in love. Because we came in a sense from different worlds. He's in the arts. I was a corporate attorney at the time. And we were going to an opening of a show at Second City. And I think it was the first or the second time that the owner had invited Rob to sit with him at the opening. And that's a big deal.
Yep.
And so we went around the corner to get Thai food. And as we're leaving the theater, we see the brother of a colleague. And this man had, I want to say, MS or cerebral palsy. I've forgotten which now. But Michael was sitting out in the cold waiting for a taxi to show up. And because of his illness, he has trouble feeling hot and cold. He has trouble with
Yeah.
sensory issues. And Rob stopped and said, "Are you okay?" And he said, "Yeah, I'm fine. I've got the cab coming. It'll be fine." We go eat dinner. We come back, and Michael is still out in the cold. And Rob, who didn't have a cell phone at the time, grabs my cell phone out, begins making phone calls. And I said to him, I was thrilled, but I said, "You're going to be late." He said, "Fine, we'll be late. This is more important." And I knew that the man who maybe was going to do something that was unwise for his career, but was going to do the right thing by a fellow human being, that's who I wanted in my life. And we have been together for 21 years and counting.
Wow.
20 years in August will be our first commitment ceremony. We couldn't get legally married at the time. And there's pretty much not a day that goes by when I think, what am I still doing with this guy? And there's not a day that goes by that I don't fall in love all over again. And I really mean that. And, the people that I am so proud of him. And moving into the arts, as I've done with this job, moving into the cultural sector, he has been not only a wonderful husband, but he has been, look at who those two guys are. I didn't even know them. But he has been a wonderful teacher and supporter and advocate for me. And you're showing all these images from Facebook, and it says at my head of my Facebook profile, luckiest guy alive, going through life with the man I love and enjoying every part of the journey, or something like that. And because the journey keeps on giving. And I couldn't be luckier than to have someone like that in my life.
So great to hear someone speaking like that about their partner or the person that they love, because at the very end, we have to normalize love as we feel it. And perhaps that's one of my messages, and one of the messages that I want to promote by normalizing of two men, grown up men, married and having a wonderful life and living life to the fullest and helping each other. That's the key. That's the key of relationship. And I found that with Gary, is that we support each other and we allow each other to have our own world, but also become one when it's necessary. And that's the key to any relationship, to be honest with you.
There's a marvelous poem, many marvelous poems from E.E. Cummings, but at our first commitment ceremony, and then at each wedding after that, I have read this poem, and it begins with the line, "Be unto love as rain is unto color." Rain is colorless.
Yeah.
But that rain creates the rainbow, creates the spectrum. Yeah. So how can you be like the rain and create the fullness of love in all of its many colors? It's such a beautiful image, and I think a potent image. Yeah. That love isn't something that you experience as sort of like a static thing. It's the means by which transformation occurs. That something colorless becomes bright and gay in all the senses of that word. It's that full spectrum that's created by something that itself has no color. So if love does that for us, we're all fuller people, and our lives are richer, not just for ourselves and for each other, but for everyone.
Such a beautiful thought, and I have to share that 100% with you, because I always say it, I found my American prince, my Ken doll, but that has other connotations for other people.
You have a handsome and wonderful husband who gives to our community. I mean, the first thing that I knew about the two of you when I came here is that you are out there in the community finding ways to give and give back and make the world, make the community that we live in better. And that's all we can ask of anybody. That's your inherent job as a human being, is to help fix the world. So thank you, and Gary, for doing that.
Well, thank you to you too. And by the way, within any household, we have a little dog, and we have little Hugo. And I know that you guys are surrounded with beautiful mascots, little creatures. And I run this quick video. Check this video out.
Okay. So
I'm in love with coconut.
the little orange boy Julius. We name our pets for food. So we had Orange Julius, coconut
Oh,
macaroon is there, but Orange Julius passed away after a nice long life
oh,
back at the end of last year. The and That's when the white dog came. That's Macaroon, and she's we say she's like Pinocchio. She's still a little timid, and she'll just freeze. And then she comes out of it like, just like Pinocchio wanted to be a real boy. We say
yeah.
you're going to be a real dog someday. And then Coconut's the little brown dog,
So cute.
she is just the she's just the sweetest thing. You saw the picture in the snowsuit when I brought her back to Chicago,
I
and I got to
know.
say, this little sweet innocent face. We step out of the loft in Chicago, out to the front porch, and it's snowing, and it's about 19 degrees, and that little sweet face just looks up at me, and it's angry. It's just hell no, and marches back in. She goes and pees on the floor. She's not going outside. So
Oh my
super
God, I
adorable.
love her. This is so funny
She is
because
a
we have.
dog, total
She's
dog
an
of the country.
Arizona. She's from here. It's like I'm a Sonoran dweller. I'm not doing anything here in Chicago.
Absolutely,
Oh my God.
absolutely.
I know this has been so much fun and I truly enjoyed the time. And like I said, we could go on for a long time because there's so much that I wanted to talk to you about. It's good that we touch on your personal life, your passion about Frank Lloyd Wright from the very early ages, and how now you are part of the tradition and the heritage of Frank Lloyd Wright. Life is like that. And I want to thank you for your time. This was enjoyable to like a lot. I don't know how to express it, only other than to say thank you.
Well, for me too, Oscar. This is great. Nice to talk to you. This has been actually a really lovely way to get to know you better,
Thank
and
you.
I'm really looking forward soon to get together with you and Gary in 3 dimensions, not on a screen. 3D is
Well,
better.
yeah, exactly. Well, we're looking forward to see you guys as well. Have a cocktail, coffee, even water these days, because now we know, that's the way life is now. But I appreciate so much your time. And sorry that it took me a full year to have this conversation.
Just glad you're doing better, and again, thank you for all you and Gary do in our community. We really, really appreciate it, and we need it. So if
Thank
you're
you. Thank you. So you can see the replay of this interview on my blog later on. I will leave all the address and information down here. I appreciate you. Thank you so much. Have a great night. We will see you soon. Say hello to the rest of the family.
will do, take care.
Okay, bye bye. And that was Stuart Graff, the CEO and president of the Frank Lloyd Wright Foundation. What a great conversation. My God, I could go on and on forever. I mean, it's just so interesting to get to know the life of one of the greatest American architects of the modern century, of the modern world, and also to learn the passion from someone who knew about Frank Lloyd Wright during his early days as he expressed, and now runs the foundation. Incredible. That's the way the universe works. So thank you so much for your time. We're past the hour. This is an hour and a half show, perhaps one of the longest ones I've had the opportunity to host. As I said right here, you can visit down here. You can see the broadcast again by visiting my blog. These broadcasts will be live tomorrow, actually, right after this, but the link will be on my blog on Wednesday evening. So every Wednesday evening, you can see my personal take of my conversation with my guest, and the link to watch the entire interview for free. How about that? So this has been really, really enjoyable. I thank you for your time. If you want to send any messages, by the way, quick break before I leave. Thank you before I go. Thank you so much for all your messages. Thank you for the support. For when you see me on a Zoom call, hey, I saw your interview with Joseph Benesh, or with Joe Spector, or with Kristen Atwell Ford, or with Letitia Fry, or all the people that I have had in this podcast through the time that I've been producing the podcast. This is me, by the way. You see me here clicking and put. Let me see. Is that on? No, it's not on. But you see me doing all this stuff. That's me. That's all me. I write the show. I cut the videos a day in advance, and I learn through the week about my guests, even though I know some or most of them. If you happen to have a friend or someone that you know, someone that you admire, or a nonprofit that you want me to interview and talk to, please send me a message in any of the portals that social media portals that you see me on. I will be so glad to get in conversation with that nonprofit, with that person, or with that program or event, even an event that you want to promote or be part of this conversation with the community. This is a window for the community, by the community. And I have to tell you that I received two offers to put this show on a broadcast network. I have two options, but I don't think I'm going to move forward until I see or I hear the right words from the producer or the person that wants me to continue this on a broadcast level, commercial broadcast level. Because once I think that once I let this go, it's going to go in a commercial kind of frame, and I don't want to do that because this is for the community, by the community. This is an hour and 40 minutes long broadcast. The Oscars, I missed them all. I'm gonna go watch my Oscars myself, and I want to thank you for your support. And please just share this link, talk to your friends about it, email me, DM me, send me a video, a picture, whatever you want. Just let's have a talk, because when Oscar talks, Oscar talk. See you soon. Bye bye.